Yo, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of Capturing the Game Within the Game podcast featuring Brady, the host, and me, Desmond Jones. Today, we got a special guest, Lonnie Nichols. Lonnie, what's going on, man? How are you doing?
I'm doing well, man. How about yourself?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good. It's been crazy up here in Indiana with it being raining and snowing and sunny one day. So I don't know what the weather like has been like for you down there, but I'm
It's
kind of
it's
tired
been
of it,
just
man.
as it's been just as dynamic down here. We was having very pretty good weather, and then this week cold in the mornings, warmer in the afternoons and evenings. So we had 30 degrees earlier today, and you know so so yeah, it's been interesting.
Nah, that's what's up. So, for the audience that's listening, man, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah. NFL agent. Been an agent for 4 years with Entourage Management. Based out of Oklahoma City. Uh, been in sports for well over 10 years now, and yeah, man, just got a little 3-year-old, soon to be four. So yeah, that's that's what's life right now. So
So with that, being an NFL agent for only 4 years now, what kind of made you get into that type of world?
so I had got my start in sports working for the Oklahoma City Thunder. I joined Oklahoma City Thunder in 2009, and loved it. Absolutely loved it. I mean, just like I'm sure, like both of you probably, growing up, I wanted to be an NBA athlete or NFL athlete. That was the dream, and about and about high school, realized that wasn't gonna happen. So. Uh, and I had no idea how to remain in sports. So I actually, majored in film and video studies at the University of Oklahoma because film was like my second love. Realized I didn't really want to do that coming out of OU, but I just finished out the degree. Graduated 2006, and then, like I said, 2009, I was able to join the Thunder. And it was incredible experience working on the business side of things. And while I was there, I decided to go back to OU to get my MBA. So I went back 2013 and then graduated with that in 2015 while I was with the Thunder. And when I graduated with that, I was trying to figure out, all right, I got this big fancy degree, what I was going to do with it. Being an agent, kind of was, I wouldn't say I knew I was going to be one or whatnot, but I always kind of flirted with it in my brain. And working for the Thunder and being able to kind of see, I say firsthand is definitely exaggerating the experience, but being able to watch and monitor, seeing Russell Westbrook's agent come in, seeing Kevin Durant's agent come in, and it was just really cool to see that relationship that those guys have. And so, and once again, I don't know either those two gentlemen. I mean, I've said a couple a couple words to Rich. Rich probably does not remember me at all, but just kind of in passing. But um, when I graduated, I kind of figured out, hey, I want to do something with sports. I got this big old degree. Um, and it kind of stumbled upon me to be an agent. So, but I still hadn't decided to do that. So when so what happened was on I believe it was on Twitter. I randomly come across Lee Steinberg's one of his seminars. They're big now, but back then I think he was still getting them off the ground. He may have had. I knew we weren't the first class, but I'm sure he probably had two or three before that at least. But it was definitely still kind of in its somewhat earlier stages. And when I came across it, it was probably about 2 weeks until the event. Uh, and anybody that knows me personally knows I'm not necessarily the most spontaneous person. Like I like to think ahead and plan instead of just up and do something. But when came across that, I was like, okay, well, I need to figure out I'm going to do this or not. So I immediately bought the ticket. Like from the time I saw it to the time that I decided to book the ticket and the plane ticket and all that stuff, it was probably no more than an hour, if that. It may have been 30 minutes or less.
That's crazy.
So I went down there. It was held in Houston at the time, and man, I enjoyed it. It was like, this is what I want to do. And what made it kind of a sure thing at that point was Chris Cavett, his guy that pretty much is running Steinberg at this point, or at least does a lot for Steinberg. I don't want to mischaracterize what's going on between them or whatnot, but Chris had pulled me to the side at the very end and was like, Lonnie, at everybody in this class, I feel like for sure you could do this. So that was all I needed. And so this was 2015. This was the fall of 2015. Actually, it was the summer 2015. And I looked up NFLPA parameters in terms of what needed to happen to certify. I made sure I applied the first chance I got, which was January 2016. Sat for the exam in July of 2016. Passed on the first try, and there you go. So I did that and started when I got certified. I actually started out under my own agency called Elite Players Agency, and I did that for 2.5 years, and then Entourage guys came and found me. Austin Beckhill, who's from Oklahoma City. Actually, we're both from Evan, Oklahoma, which is a northern suburb of Oklahoma City. Just kind of that we had a mutual friend or mutual connect, and I ended up joining Entourage back in 2019, and been on Entourage since.
Wow, that's an incredible story. And just from that, man, I got tons of stuff I want to ask.
Okay.
I'm trying to not jump the gun on so many things. So I'm about to backtrack a little bit. So
Okay.
you joined the OKC team in 2009. I
Mm-hmm.
know they moved from Seattle in 2008 at that time.
Correct.
So
Correct.
what was it like, man, for to be a part of a team that just moved to your hometown city
Right.
and just started pretty much they getting off their franchise off the ground coming from Seattle. What was that?
I
What
wouldn't
was
change
that
it for the
time like?
world, man. Incredible experience because obviously the game now in terms of video games is NBA 2K. But growing up, you guys probably around my age or somewhat near it in the ballpark, NBA Live was the game growing
Yep,
up. And
the show
so
was.
I grew up a diehard Chicago Bulls fan. So if I wasn't playing with the Bulls, yep, MJ all day, man. MJ go.
My man's.
But if I wasn't playing with the Bulls, I would like play a season or two, then I would create a team in Oklahoma City. And man, growing up, I mean, we used to just get preseason games. So we was the preseason market, and my dad took me to see the Cleveland Cavaliers versus the Houston Rockets here, played at what at the time was called the Myriad. And so, man, being able to work for a professional team in my backyard was a dream come true. I mean, literally one of the best days of my life. Um, and in terms of getting back to your question of what it was like, there's a few things that stick out to me in terms of what it was like working for a team. We were all, all obviously the executives and leadership, they were, somewhat older. I say older, but they were young compared to their other counterparts around the league, but obviously older than a lot of us guys doing the kind of the groundwork or whatnot. But man, we were some young. Everybody was young. We're all in our low to mid 20s, and it was just an incredible experience. Just because, literally speaking, and I kid you not. So I worked in the sales department for the Thunder. We would literally call people around the state. Now, at this time, when I joined the Thunder, Thunder had been here for a year. We had been here for a season. They
Right.
endured that 26 win season. I want to say it's 26 win season. Um, and while when the team came in, it was big news. Great. It was everybody was so happy. You know, the Oklahoma City market was really spoiled by the Hornets' success who were here prior. Chris Paul. Chris
Yep.
Paul. If everyone remembers, Chris Paul spent his rookie year here in Oklahoma City, and that
Mm-hmm.
team was exciting to watch. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Chris Paul is dynamic, and that team was just like a young gunning team that was everybody enjoyed, and the city loved that team, and the city was happy to get the Seattle franchise to come down. But at the time, I mean, obviously, we had Kevin Durant, but not too many people really knew Russell. And then when I joined, I came in the same
Mm-hmm.
year James Harden came in. It was like this team, and they just came off a 26 win season, and now the city was like, it's almost like you would think the team had been here 10, 15 years because the city was like, man, y'all are terrible. So uh, we would literally call people who did not know who the Thunder were in the state. Now, I get it. Not everybody's a sports fan, right? Not everybody's Oklahoma is, despite the fact that Oklahoma, both OU and both Oklahoma State have both had University of Tulsa as well. You can add in Oral Roberts even before their run this year. This state has had some good college basketball teams here,
For sure.
but make no mistake about it, OU football run this state. It's still technically run this state. Uh, Even with the Thunder being here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I get it that not everybody was a basketball fan, not everybody's a sports fan. But if you ain't a sports fan, you probably watch the news. I mean, this is before streaming, this is before all that stuff. People still had cable. If you didn't have cable, you had basic TV. You had to watch the news. How do you
Right.
not know who the Thunder are?
In your own in your own
And
in your own state.
in your own state. Like, it used to amaze me how many times we would conversate with someone who didn't know who we were. And a little bit of kind of behind the scenes, every professional sports franchise deals with this, or I shouldn't say deals with this, wrong word. Because most professional sports markets, Chicago, New York, LA, Dallas, Houston, you name it, those are established professional sports markets. The business community, knows how to properly leverage a franchise and its team for not only its good, but the professional teams needs the business community to sustain itself because the business community is who's buying up the expensive property within the arena or stadium. So the suites, or if you're football, the 50-yard seats, if it's basketball, the courtside seats, or if it's baseball, behind home plate. And then also the business community that's providing sponsorships and the arena partnership deals and stadium partnership deals. So they have these developed and mature business communities that know how to support a franchise. And the biggest thing about when I joined the Thunder is that we were having to train the business community here how to support a franchise properly, because it was still kind of like a novelty here, and we had to really train. So we had people not only, so we were calling people who not only did not know who we were, didn't realize that we were in town, and then having to train a whole business community. And on top of that, just now advancing past my first year with the Thunder second year here, but my first year and getting into the later years, obviously that 2019, that was the fun team. That was Russ, that was Kevin, that was James, that was Jeff Green. That team was fun to watch and gave the Lakers everything they wanted that year in the first round of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
And they were on the ascension. at that point. And then we became a title contending team. And then we got to the finals. We were the favorite in the finals against the LeBron-led Heat team until LeBron became, LeBron did his thing and knocked us out.
Yeah.
This city had a lot of success early on. And it went from like, oh man, you guys are terrible. It was no middle ground. It was y'all are terrible. Oh wow, y'all are good. Oh wow, you guys are like the arguably the best team in the league.
Yeah.
And that experience, I don't even know if I could accurately describe it. Even fans here, even if you're a fan that came to every game, I don't know that I could accurately describe the experience that it was like for us who worked for the team for that type of success that we had early on, because it was truly growing something. It was truly like a startup. I mean, yeah, we had a lot of things. We had a lot of employees that came and commuted. I shouldn't say commuted is the wrong word, but moved with the team from Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
But there was also a lot of injection of people like myself who were Oklahoma City natives. And so it was like this startup type culture, and you're growing something, and now the building's full. I mean, you look at attendance records at the time, we were in the same breath as Chicago, New York, and the Lakers. And that was just all from everything, every department with the Thunder, from the basketball side to marketing to community relations to sales, everybody just maxing out, doing everything they can. And just the experience of being able to see that, man, firsthand, it was fantastic. Uh, but with great success and great fandom, obviously we know what happened years later. First with James, and then the heartbreak with Golden State. When you have the type of success, that type of high, and you got to come down. Those lows could be, those are interesting days as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think, man, early days of OKC, those fans got spoiled
yeah,
because not many franchises, come in doing great like that, especially starting off, even
yep,
just historically, like this to come in on a fan base with immediate high, with having all well three Hall of Fame players at the time on one
right,
team, and just to see that team slowly break apart over the years, it was definitely heartbreaking to see. And
right.
I always wondered would have what would that OKC team would have been like if all of them would have stayed together.
It'll always be the big what if. I can't wait
Yep.
for the 30 for 30 on that team.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love all that. And I know I'm come with the sports management background of I graduated that in college, and there's so many questions that I would just love to ask you. I know we probably could save it for another podcast episode because just everything with your experience of coming in, being a OKC native, them moving from Seattle, coming in, and that experience. Like I was just kind of curious on um, how was it like with you being a native there in OKC and then them moving down from Seattle? How was that the culture like with you guys being there, then moving in, and did you guys clash or was there any challenges within the two different sides coming together to one?
so what's funny is the people who moved with the team, because what you're describing was accurate terms. You really had two segments, right? You had, well, kind of three segments, but I'll explain here in a sec. So you had the group that came with the team that was working for the Seattle franchise. There are people that is still with the team now that has 10, 15 years with the team as when they were in Seattle.
Hmm.
So you do have some long timers that are there. But a lot, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of us was young, whether we came with the team from Seattle or not. A lot of us were really young. So you had a group that came with the team from Seattle, and those people were from various places. Some from you know Vegas and California and different parts. We actually was coincident, kind of a coincidence. There was actually someone that was from Oklahoma who end up getting a job with the team while they're in Seattle, just for them to move back to Oklahoma City. So you had a group kind of like that, but you also had my people like myself who are Oklahoma City natives who joined the team, whether it be when the team first landed here or like me a year later. And then the third pod that I kind of referenced was you had some people who weren't Oklahoma City natives. They were from other parts of the country, whether it be Texas or somewhere else, that also joined the team. Um, Whether it was the first year or the year after. But we got along great because it was like we all had the same mission. It was this incredible task that we were going to take this team. And like I said, when I joined the team was coming off 26 wins. People weren't lining up to come see us. You would think, man, Oklahoma City, y'all been begging for respect as a metropolitan area for years. I mean, I was here when the bombing happened. Obviously, 2 days ago was the anniversary of the April 19th bombing. I was in fifth grade when the bomb happened, and the school that I attended, I heard the bomb go off. I remember it like it was yesterday. And um, I actually spent a couple years in Colorado during my middle school and high school years. And when you tell somebody from Oklahoma City, the first thing they mention is, "Oh man, that's where the bombing happened." That's what we were known for: the bombing and tornadoes. That's what we were known for. And Oklahoma City had been on this big time initiative really since like 1990, even really before the bombing, um, to really take that next step as a metropolitan area, right? And so one of the biggest indicators of your status as a city is having a professional franchise. We had the professional franchise, and they had 26 wins, and then nobody really was checking for us like that at the time. So this incredible task is what, we got to build this thing organically from the ground up. And we're all, like I said, a lot of it has to do with the age group that we're in. We're all low to mid 20s. At the time, I was 3 years removed from college. Some people were a year or two removed. Some came right out of college. And so it was just incredible experience in terms of trying to be a part of something great, which is make this brand, like, make people proud to want to be a Thunder fan. And I'll add this as well. For some reason, a lot of people don't really truly like to rep like Oklahoma City. Like, there's not a lot of is not as much civic pride when you compare it to, like, people from Dallas. I'm from the D, or I'm from H Town, or I'm from New York, and there wasn't like a whole lot of that, and then even early on, you still had people who were trying to claim other teams. I could told you, I grew up a diehard Bulls fan. And honestly, for the first year or two, when the Bulls played the Thunder, I was conflicted. I would just root for whoever had the ball, literally. And then
Yeah.
pretty soon the Thunder fandom overtook the Bulls fandom. And you saw a lot of that. And really the only people who kind of held on to their fandom were Lakers fans. And Lakers fans, Laker fans, you can't break their fandom. They are
No.
Laker fans for life.
Yeah.
It's, and but to really take a team that was kind of frowned upon, I won't say frowned upon, but this really wasn't the hottest thing after that first year. And then now everybody's a Thunder fan. Everybody identifies. Everybody's wearing blue and orange. Everybody's, and it was helped by having Kevin and Russell and James, because they were just such a cool guys to get behind. But yeah, those first 2 or 3 years, honestly, up until that Golden State finals, those years are priceless in terms of experience. But even more so, those first 2 or 3 years, it was just incredible experience. Hopefully I answered your question with that. I know I talked
No, no,
a
you
bit.
did definitely answer it for sure. And it's awesome just hearing all of that and just being so young and being around everyone else that's young and being able to be a part of something so miraculous like that with moving
Yeah,
a team in and just being up and coming with the team and having to call those fans who don't know that there's a really a team there. And I know that just hearing you say that, it's like it's baffling just
Right.
You should pay attention to the news at least and know that like a team's coming. But no, I totally understand like that uh, frustration or little
Right.
nitpicks of cold calling people to try to get them to come into the venue.
Right. Right. No, and then the coolest thing is that lasted about a year and a half in terms of people not knowing who we were. After a year and a half, you couldn't talk to anybody that didn't know who we were at that point. It was incredible. In fact, sometimes I would wear and I got a kick out of it the first few years before it kind of became annoying. But if I have like any type of Thunder apparel on or gear, I'm I say I'm 6'3". I'm like a shade under 6'3", but 6'3" sounds a little sexier. So 6'3", and I go into Target or something like that, and I have anything Thunder related on. And when you work for a team, anybody who's worked for a team can tell you, you get stuff that ain't like sold in stores. So it's like stuff that like polos or whatnot, and or you may get something that looks like one of the players would wear. So walk in, people would stop me numerous times and be like, hey, you play for the Thunder? And so in the first few years, even though the team was growing in popularity, it was everybody knew who Russ was, everyone knew who Kevin was, everyone knew who James was, Jeff Green, etc. But it was one of those things also where I could have been one of the guys at the end of the bench that didn't quite have the notoriety quite yet. And it was always interesting to be able to do that. It came to a point where it kind of got annoying because I literally had a couple of young women that kind of followed me around the store one time. I mean, it wasn't like creepy, but it was more just kind of like, I promise y'all, I'm not anybody you want to autograph for. So then it was like, okay, I can't even go to the store. I can only imagine what those guys go through when they do simple tasks. I mean, I was just a random person having to try to turn down the autograph and stuff. But there are some people who run around Oklahoma City with autographed basketballs, and they got Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and my signature on there. There's probably about 3 or 4 balls floating around the city, just because I would tell them, I'm like, I'm not a player, I'm not anybody, important or anything like that. And they'd be like, I don't know if they just thought I was lying or what. They're like, sign it anyway. So there's about 3 or 4 basketballs walking around, someone's, and it's just Lonnie from business development, man. So
That's hilarious.
yeah,
So, all right. So, I'm a Bulls fan. Like,
yeah,
grew up Bulls fans. How did you like become? Like, talk to me a little bit about your Bulls fandom. This is so off
yep.
topic. Curious.
I can tell you exactly where it came from. I remember the very first NBA game that I recall watching. Well, generally speaking, I don't remember which game of the finals it was, but it was the Bulls Lakers series, the first ring. That was the first NBA game I recall watching.
Okay.
And obviously that's Michael Jordan um, at, I won't say peak. I don't think his peak was for a few years after that, but that was Michael Jordan, like what he became, right? Like that's the legend of Michael Jordan right there.
Right.
So I was hooked at that point. And my dad he's from Brooklyn, New York, and he was a diehard Knicks fan. So the Bulls Knicks rivalry in our household was incredible.
Huge.
Now my dad passed back this past January, but some of the most incredible thoughts and memories that I have is just us going back and forth about the Bulls and Knicks. And yeah, man, I mean the Portland series. So my dad was military. So during the Portland Bulls series, so that second ring, we actually lived in Anchorage, Alaska. I remember watching the Bulls Blazer series in Alaska, and then for the Bulls Sun series, we was back in Oklahoma City, and that's how it became. Uh, And so, yeah, I became a diehard Bulls fan. And honestly, if I had never worked for the Thunder, if the Thunder never come to Oklahoma City, I'd be a diehard Bulls fan today, because I rode with the Bulls during the Pfizer years and the Elton Brand years. You know, like I didn't just stop when Michael Jordan retired. The Jamal Crawford years, you know,
Just
and
crossover
so
the 80 Robinson. Ooh.
yeah, yeah. During those years, I was still watching WGN, watching the
Yep.
Bulls. I remember when the Bulls put up wars, they set the record for lowest amount of points. Was it like 48 points, something like that, 46
So
points?
stupid. Oh, dude, I
I
remember
watched that game, you know. So I wasn't just a Jordan fan or a Fairweather fan. I was diehard WGN 2-3 times a week, you know, watching Bulls fan. And so it took a few years, and the Bulls still have a soft spot in my heart. No, they'll always have a soft spot in my heart, you know. But it took probably I would say probably by like season three of me being with the Thunder. By that point, I could watch a Bulls Thunder game and not be conflicted. It was Thunder all the way at
man,
that point.
that's hard.
And
That had to be
but here,
hard.
but here's the thing, because I have a cousin that gives me a hard time. Uh, he's a Lakers fan, and he was like, "Man, how you gonna like turn in on the Bulls?" And it's like it's one of those things where when you work for a franchise, regardless of how you felt about that franchise beforehand, it becomes part of you. Um, and especially with me being Oklahoma City native, that just made it even more special. And I have a friend that works for the Brooklyn Nets, worked with me with the Thunder, and she's diehard Nets now. You know, and it's just one of those things where when you work for a team, you become a part of just wanting to win, and that's honestly, switching to football a little bit. I grew up a diehard New York Giants fan, still a Giants fan to this day. But when you become an agent, while you still may have some soft spots, or you still may root for whatever your favorite team is, it's like you know that when you're trying to get guys with teams or jobs, it takes a step back in terms of your fandom. You're able to now just see teams as just like opportunities. You don't see them as much from the fan perspective. Um, so yeah, that's kind of how all that went about with the Bulls and how the Bulls fandom started. So
I got you. I it's interesting that you brought up the whole it's kind of drawing a line in the sand
mhm,
between having your fandom and also the business side of it and of being an
right.
agent. How like have you been able to, keep the lane separate? Like has the business aspect of it damaged your fandom or maybe look at you differently since now you're looking at it from the other side? You're as they say, you're looking to see how the meat's made, how it's
Right.
made and processed and delivered.
That's an excellent question. I would say becoming an agent has improved my fandom, but not fandom for a team, fandom for the sport. Because
Mm,
before I became an agent, like I said, I grew up a diehard New York Giants fan, and I still consider myself a Giants fan to this day. Uh, if I watch the Giants and I watch the playoffs and I watch the Super Bowl, like, and I wasn't watching the Eagles versus the Broncos. I wasn't watching the Chiefs versus the Seahawks, or the
yeah,
Dolphins versus the Steelers. I
yeah,
like, it was the Giants. It was the playoffs. So whoever made the playoffs, I was watching the playoffs, regardless of who's in the playoffs, and I was watching the Super Bowl. But when I became an agent, because my Giants fandom kind of took a step back, which honestly is right on time because the Giants have been so horrible the last few years,
they
or at least
have.
not as good as they were in the 2000s. Uh,
Right.
uh, it was kind of like right on time, because man, I'd be miserable if all I had to do was just be a Giants fan right now. And so being an agent has allowed me to be able to watch the game of football and really truly enjoy the game of football. And right now, one of my favorite teams to watch, like obviously I still try to catch every Giants game. But man, the Chiefs for me are like must see TV. And
Yeah.
I never really cared for the Chiefs because I always thought the Chiefs color scheme and uniforms were just awful. I still think they did. It's like it's a shame Patrick Mahomes, who may end up being the GOAT, has to be the GOAT in that awful Chiefs uniform. And they probably won't ever change it because I'm sure Chiefs fans, it's iconic now. So you can't even change that scheme. Um, but now I love watching the Chiefs, and what I've ever come to that place where I wasn't an agent. I love watching Baltimore play. What Lamar Jackson's doing with Baltimore is fun to watch.
Mhm.
And so I would say my fandom as a football fan has increased, while my Giants fandom decreased in a way that I don't have to live and die with every loss, or loss or win. If they lose, all right, well, I'm going to just turn on the next game now. When before it'd be like, all right, what can I watch that's not football now? So,
Y Yeah, no, you're saying you're a Giants fan. I'm a Patriots fan, so when you were saying that, I was thinking about the Super Bowls that the 2 that they lost like that. But, with being an NFL agent and transitioning from being in the NBA and then coming over to NFL agent, are there any, like, highs and lows of just being an NFL agent? Like, any struggles that you have, in that, world?
yeah, excellent question. One of the things I try to tell people who are interested in becoming an agent when I get asked is you want to make sure you truly do have a passion. Obviously, you have to have a passion for sports and the game itself that you're getting involved with, and a hunger for it. Because being an agent is going to test you. It's going to test you, especially when you start now. All of us who go down this path, you when you decide you want to be an agent, I bet 98% of us, we don't envision the struggle. you know we envision being David Mulligetta. We envision being Lee Steinberg. We envision ourselves being at the top of the game, and having these high priority clients and whatnot. And you're seeing that. You're not envisioning the struggle that goes with that. And so having a passion for the sport and the game itself is one important pillar that you need. And the other pillar that you need, is like a calling for why you're getting into it. And I think that one is the one where a lot of people who think they want to be agent, who actually do go through the process of becoming an agent, where they a lot of times may fail, is because they have no calling or mission, kind of like your mission statement of why you wanted to become an agent. They see what they want to see. They see the lifestyle that they want to get. Maybe they envision being an agent similar to Ballers or something like that, like the show Ballers. But you really need that second pillar to help you get through the ups and downs. Because when you start now, especially, you know, there is one way to have a quick path to success as an agent, and that is knowing, or being related to, or having some sort of relationship with a guy or young lady who is destined to stardom. Like they're a phenom, or not even have to be a phenom, but just that they got a first class ticket to being a star at the professional level. And if you can show and prove that, an agency will scoop you right up because of that relationship. Or even if you went solo and you was able to parlay that relationship to actual representation agreement, once again, you now have a big time client. And when you're recruiting and things of that nature, it's easier to sell yourself when you have a guy like this big old shiny object that you can show other players. Um, but for most of us that get into becoming an agent, we don't have that luxury. I sure didn't. Um, so when you're growing it, you're it's literally bare knuckles when you're trying to go through this, and that's the highs and lows because it's the highs and lows of recruiting. And you have to keep in mind. I mean, I'm 36. I'll be 37 in July. Um, a lot of these guys that we're recruiting, for me, particularly in the football field, they're 21, 22, 23. And so you're trying to convince someone at that age why you're the best fit for them. And at that age, if we can all recall what we were like at that age, we didn't always value the things that we should probably value. We're still attracted to the shiny object, somebody saying the right thing, promising the right things. And so those guys are still learning their boundaries or learning how to determine who's good for them and who isn't. So you have that recruiting aspect is difficult as it is because you're trying to convince these young guys to sign with you. And especially if you're not what a big name agency, now you're trying to fight off those big agencies or even the kind of your upper mid tier ones. You're trying to fight them off and tell them why you're a better fit than them. And a lot of time, because these guys are young, they don't always make the right decision. And when I say decision, I don't mean in terms of who they sign with, although that you can put that in that bucket. But how to, like, if you and I are talking, and if I'm trying to recruit you, and you and I have a great rapport and great relationship going, you decide to go in another direction. That's cool. That's okay. But let me know properly. And I'm not so high and mighty that you need to call me and talk to me and whatnot, but just a simple text message. Hey, Lonnie, I appreciate everything. And, I decided, after speaking with my family, we're going in the opposite direction, but hey, I appreciate everything you've done in recruiting. And that's it. And you don't even got to spell it that much, but just a simple like acknowledgement that you're signing with someone else. And a lot of guys, because once again they're young, they still haven't kind of learned the best way to handle everything. You got guys that just kind of go ghost on you. They just disappear. They stop answering your texts. They would answer every one of your texts. They would answer every one of your calls. But then the minute they decide to go another direction, it's like they fall off the grid. And so you have that because you may feel like, man, that guy was really vibing. Like, God, dog, like, what did I say to them? Not, and then to disappear on me. So you have that, and then when you do get a guy to sign with you, if you're starting out, once again, you're probably looking at guys who were late rounds or undrafted type guys, and these are guys who are talented, right? Like they wouldn't be in the market for an agent. You wouldn't be in the market to sign them if they weren't talented in their own right. These guys are usually starters and guys who produce for their respective teams and one of the better players on their respective teams, but just that the NFL just doesn't value them, doesn't think that they're good enough, or there are other players who are better at the position, and so you just kind of live and kind of die with these young men whose dreams you have in your hands, and you take that personal. At least if you're a good agent, you take it personal. You it's as if the guy you're representing is like your younger brother or your son or you. Um, and when they don't get those opportunities, you feel that. Once again, if you're a good agent with a heart, you feel it. And those are low. Those are low points. And that's the struggle of trying to, move up in the game as an agent. Is those are low points, and those things will test you. Um, and if you don't have that calling in terms of why you want to do this, it's easy to just be like, I'm just going to quit. I'm getting out of this. This is not what I thought it was going to be.
Man, how many people did you go through before you signed your first athlete?
So actually, I signed a client my first year.
Okay.
Um, and to answer your question, I recruited two people before I got a guy to sign. They were all during that same year.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, one of the guys, and now without saying his name, I'll basically lead you breadcrumbs to who it is. One of the guys that I recruited and made it all the way down to his final two and almost was able to sign would have been a huge, huge signing for me as a rookie agent is one of the top receivers in the game who just signed with my favorite team uh, this year.
Hey guys, thinking what that is.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, signed the biggest contract for receiver this off season so far. So he played for the Detroit Lions,
All
but
right. Yeah, I think
I
I get it.
recruited him and missed out on him, and I recruited a guy at OU that I missed out on, and then the guy that actually signed. Uh, and anyone who's an agent will know what this is like. When you become an agent, you do get hit up quite a bit by a lot of people, just random guys who think they have a chance, and 99% of them don't. It's like there's a reason why they're reaching out to you versus the opposite way because no one's really recruiting them. But that 1% of the time, you actually get somebody who's worthwhile. And my first year, I got that 1%. It was a guy by the name of Jordan Bate, played at Colorado State, was a receiver for most of his time there, and then he was converted to corner. He was 6'4", around 200 pounds. And he was kind of rated as like an undrafted type of guy, but because of his height, because of his athleticism, uh, his agility, you know, it was great representing him during that process. He reached out to me. We connected right away. Parents liked me and ended up signing him. And I will always, and I tell him every time I get a chance, how fortunate and thankful I am that he signed with me and took a chance on me.
Mm-hmm.
He did make it past a couple of camp invitations and tryouts from the Jaguars, but to be able to go through that process is so important, especially as a rookie agent, to be able to speak with teams, to have teams call you and ask you about your client, and you go through those process of what it's like doing pre-draft and whatnot. I
Yeah.
was thankful enough to have a client that coveted that type of attention. Um, and so, yeah, that was the first guy that I signed, and it was a great experience.
so with that, that first player that you got, kind of a two-part question here.
Hmm.
What was that feeling like of being able to have that first player, be a rookie agent, and get that first signing, and then kind of backtracking as well? A part of that, what was your kind of motivation of becoming an agent? What was um, that like the fire, that drive that made you want to
Yeah.
get into that?
And what was the first part of that question again? I'm sorry.
What was the feeling like when you were able to sign your first player
Oh,
as a
yeah.
first year agent?
So the feeling was fantastic. I mean, I still I still remember what I was doing when he told me. I was in the drive-through at Popeyes, and he texted me.
Uh,
He texted me like, "Hey man, I want to join up with you." And then we got on the phone, and then I ended up flying to Denver like a week or so later, or a week or two later, and ended up signing him. It was a fantastic feeling because once again, when you are an agent, especially a rookie, when you get hit up by a lot of guys, I mean, I got hit up by guys that played NAIA ball, and not only did they play NAIA, and there's nothing wrong with that. They're not many, but
mm-hmm.
there have been, you know, a very, very, very small number of guys who have played at that level and gone on to the NFL. I don't know how many. I know it's not a lot,
Yeah.
but I don't think I don't think there's ever been any player that's not started for their NAIA team that played in the NFL. And I actually, you'd have a couple guys that would reach out and it's like, dude, you could even start at NAIA or you couldn't start at Division 3 school.
Yeah.
And they always got the same thing, like, man, I'm a dog. I'm just no one, I just need somebody to believe in me. And it's like, yo, man, listen, there's plenty of opportunities that you could do. You could be a coach or a scout. They'd love to have you. You did play college ball, even though you didn't start. You could pursue that, but you're not playing in the league, man. There's levels to this. And
Yeah.
I can play in the CFL. Well, no, you can't. Them dudes are dogs too. Like there's levels to this.
Yeah.
Um, and so to get a guy like Jordan, who was a starter at Colorado State, once again, that's that 1%. And I don't. And to this day, I even asked him, and his answer, I don't know why, but for some reason, his answer didn't make much sense. I still don't know how he found me or what the connection was, because he did have a couple guys recruiting him, and he just didn't. I guess he just didn't like them or care for them that much. But to get to your second part, what my motivation of calling is. So I mentioned working for the Thunder. I got to see, um, I should say first, and I got to see the interactions that, you know, Russ had with his agent had with his with Russ's family, and then as well as Kevin's representation as well. Not only just Kevin's agent, but the couple of people that he has around him that helps him make decisions. And it was just really that was really cool for me to see that interaction. It wasn't like this very salesy, lawyerish type,
Mhm.
relationship that a lot of agents have with their clients, because a lot of these agents are attorneys, and so they were trained as an attorney. They think like an attorney. They've been attorneys for most of their lives, and so a lot of time those guys can have a tendency to treat their clients like they treat their law clients or whatnot. But these are very like family type relationships, and so that was, I would say, like a good seed, if I could describe it anyway, like a seed in terms of what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And then going through that seminar that featured Lee Steinberg and Chris Cabot, those guys, their representation style is also very kind of in a very personal type sense. And so to have that built on top of that seed, if that's like the soil or whatnot, that's surrounding the seed. But the spark or the sunlight, what made it grow, what really drives me, and what made me want to become an agent was obviously having the love of sport and the love of game of football. But me being a black male myself and growing up, uh, idolizing Michael Jordan, idolizing athlete after athlete, and knowing, and I'm someone who had a father in the home. In fact, I had, two fathers. I had the man that raised me, the guy that I mentioned. He was actually my stepdad, but he was the man that's been there since I was 4 years old. And I also had my biological dad. Even though I had two, male figures, um, it's just something about like an athlete that you just really identify with, especially when you young and black and you just really don't have a whole lot of representation, a lot of other fields to really
Mhm.
pattern and model yourself after. And going back to my experience with Thunder, seeing the examples, anyone could tell me when Kevin left the Thunder, I was just as salty as everybody else, but salty in like a respectful way, not a disrespectful way.
Yeah.
And I always tell people, you will never hear me say anything bad about Kevin personally, because every interaction I ever had with Kevin was great. Every interaction I saw Kevin have with people was great. And I think anyone who knows him personally would tell you, or has interacted with him, could tell you that he's a fantastic person. And the same thing with Russ. Uh, and to see what those type of athletes can model for young kids looking up to them. And then you look at the best example out of everybody, which is LeBron. I'll tell you all day that Michael Jordan should go. Michael Jordan is by far, period, on the end of the sentence, the best basketball player I ever saw touch a basketball. LeBron's number two. But in my terms of like man crush, in terms of just really respecting and appreciating what they do on and off the court, LeBron takes that mantle for me. And
Absolutely.
so I always want to be a part of something like that. And listen, not everybody's like, there's one LeBron, there's one Michael
Yeah.
Jordan, there's one KD, there's one Russell.
Yep.
But there are most guys that make it to that elite level are going to be your middle, your middle income, professional athlete wise, but your average type athlete in terms of professional, using professional sports as our population, not compared to the common person. Most of those guys will be able to go to Target or go to Walmart or go to the store and go unnoticed, especially in football because they wear a helmet.
Yeah.
But the effect that those guys can have still, even though they're not the most recognizable, even though they're not LeBron, they're not Patrick Mahomes, they're not Tom Brady, the effect that they can have in their respective communities, I always want to be a part of that. And so that's one part of the motivation, is being able to take a young man. And I mentioned the first NBA game I watched. I've watched every NBA and NFL draft since like 1992. Like I remember when Drew Bledsoe got drafted. I remember my first NBA draft that I remember was the Chris Webber Shaq draft.
Ooh.
And listen, I'm not a crier.
Yeah.
But I promise, the last 6-7 drafts, I've cried at least once at every NBA NFL draft that I've watched. Because there's always a story that touches you or something like that.
Yeah.
See the guys get emotional, and that makes me emotional, because to be a part of somebody they've worked their entire life for that moment and they get to enjoy that moment.
Yeah.
That is something that you can't. It's such an experience, right? And so I want to be a part of that experience, helping them get to this place. And then once they get to that place, helping manage their career, be a good model for people who look up to them, guiding their career. And then most importantly, because understanding that most of the guys that play in these leagues are not going to have these big time Hall of Fame careers. They're going to be another name in the NBA database or another name in the NFL database. Being able to transition them from that sport that they're playing to life after that sport. And that's my kind of what gets me up, gets me going, and why I wanted to be an agent. It's bigger than just being able to sign a guy and rep a guy and negotiate contracts. It's helping this guy accomplish his dream, help him manage that dream, be the best at his dream, show the dream and be a model of that dream for others who look up to him, and then to utilize that dream to write another few chapters after that dream is over. That's kind of that's what gets me going.
No, I think that's fantastic, and I can tell that you buy just by the shirt that you're wearing, which I'm gonna ask you about the shirt later,
Yeah.
because I definitely want you to talk about it.
Yeah.
One thing that I was gonna ask you about, and you just mentioned it with talking about the NFL draft. I know for my family, my brother, and my dad, we always got together and watch every single NFL draft. For the most
Mm-hmm.
part, we've always pretty much watched every NBA draft. And
Right.
I wanted to know what is this time like right now being an NFL agent and preparing for the NFL draft and next week?
It's exciting right now. I have a couple guys in this year's draft class, and it's really cool when the phone rings. They love it when their phone rings,
Yeah.
and it's that time of the year. And I'm excited. They're excited, and it's that once again going back to what motivates me is both of my guys, Thomas Leggett out of Texas Tech and Jeremiah Haydell out of Texas State. These guys have been playing football for a good chunk of years,
Hmm.
and they are right here, right? They're right here. They have an opportunity. Not every player that plays college football has this opportunity sitting in front of them.
Yeah.
Teams are calling and teams are saying, hey, we like you, we're interested in you. And it's an incredible process. And it's like, man, where am I going to play? What helmet am I going to put on? What jersey I'm going to be repping. So it's really exciting right now in terms of the prep for that. And once again, that's the inner 10-year-old in me sitting back watching the draft, except the inner 10-year-old in me is actually active participant in the process. And that's always really cool. So yeah.
No, I think that's wonderful. I've always so here's another thing that I wanted to know about was because this is something that the media I feels like or just fans of the game or fans of the draft when they're looking at the NFL draft, they're showing a lot of tragic stories that a lot of people
Yeah.
feel as though. Do you feel it's the same thing, or do you feel like, hey, this is just the way that people has grown up? This is just
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up.
okay.
Context is everything.
Yeah,
Context is everything. And who's telling that context is everything. I have an issue with how, especially, it seemed like it's gotten really bad like the last 2 or 3 years, both
yeah,
NBA and NFL drafts,
yeah,
which is you have these announcers spilling everything. This is this. So right now, my two guys, and every kid right now preparing for the draft, NFL and NBA. When that draft happens, so let's just talk about the sport that I participate in, football. Next Thursday, next Friday, next Saturday, these guys are gonna be glued to the TV. Their families
yep,
gonna be glued to the TV with them. Hopefully, they're wearing a mask, social distancing, and gotten their vaccine if they're gonna be huddling up. But either way,
right,
and one of the biggest, if not the biggest moment in their lives on TV. They see that they get the call, the name flashes across the screen, their highlights is going on. Someone's recording, either mom's recording or the uncle's recording, everybody's reaction. They're all watching. They've been waiting for this moment, ever since he was playing middle school and high school football. He was always gifted in the sport. He always looked like he had NFL written on him. And now he's here. It's his moment. And then you want to bring up that his dad was murdered or his mom was on drugs. But oh look, she's good now, but she was on
yeah,
drugs. Or his brother died. His brother was in gangs. He could have been in a gang. He was arrested 4 times.
yeah,
And it's like when they watch that, when they show that, when he shows that, when that player shows that to his kids when they get older, or his grandkids, or whoever in the family, every time they see that video, they gotta see that repeated about them. That is not the time and place. If that kid wants to talk about his dad being in jail, or his mom being on drugs, or his brother being shot and killed, or his brother being in jail, or him being in jail, arrested
hmm,
4 times, you know what they have for that? They got interviews. To sit down, conduct the and he can willingly talk about that experience. That kid's biggest moment is not the place to reveal that, and it's that's one thing. Context is everything. Now, does that mean like maybe the kid sat down with somebody before the draft and talked about those things? And if you mention it
yeah,
super quick, like, hey, he was this featured on this ESPN story, you mentioned yada yada yada, but man, you did that. I think that could be forgivable. But most of these have not been that. It's been just spilling the kid's backstory and at his biggest moment. That's what I'm not for at all. You should be celebrating him. You could say he had a hard life without actually going to the gritty details. You could say, you know what, this kid has overcome obstacles. He's overcome a lot of things in his life. I will allow you guys to Google it or look it up or whatever. But man, this is an incredible moment for him. That's what it should be about. If you got to mention some level of backstory, and once again, that just goes into having when you're having those production meetings. I'm curious as to who's in the room, and that's why it's very important to have diversity in that room because someone can say, "Hey, you know what? Saying that's probably not a good idea,"
Yeah.
or say it this way because this is his biggest moment, and we don't want to wreck that biggest moment by talking about tragedy like that. So
Yeah, I feel like that's that film background when you talking because
yeah,
writers need to figure out who's all in the room because you want to have diverse
right,
room, not device, diverse room in order to kind of paint the picture,
right,
and so I always wonder like who puts out like the story. Is it something that like as you as an agent that you don't have really any type of control of, or is this something that say whoever's hosting the NFL draft at the time is something that they put together?
right. I mean, I haven't represented a player that has gone through that process, so I don't know what I
Okay.
do. What I do know, just from the little I do know in terms of that process, is obviously everybody at NFL Network and everybody at ESPN, they're going to have production meetings leading up to the draft. They're going to discuss these players. And if you
Mhm.
notice, especially when you get past like round 3 and round 4, you start to get into the round 5, 6, 7. They start just rattling off the players.
Right. Right.
They're not stopping for every player to tell their backstories.
Right.
But they know ahead of time which guys they're going to actually spend time speaking about, and so they've had those discussions somewhere.
Yeah.
And once again, it's in that place when they're having those discussions where someone needs to say, "Hey, let's make sure we don't talk about the kid, his brother being shot to death in front of him and his mom was on drugs right at his biggest moment. That's not a good idea. If we want to, and I do think that their intentions are good. I don't think they're doing it with bad intentions. I think they're doing it in
Yeah.
a sense that they want to show, like, man, this is look what he's overcome. But there's a way to do it once
Hmm.
again without just piling on and ruining that kid's moment.
Yeah,
No.
I definitely agree with that. I know we're probably all in agreement with how they're doing it.
Yeah.
I do know it's probably taken away from part of the highlights that they're having and just showing that background. And maybe it's a negative thing for them, so then it's already a negative report on their stat sheet that you're already bringing this stuff up. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, they're a great player, but then you have this negative story thrown before them, and so people already have like
Right.
maybe a bad sense of view on them. Which, going what you're saying, maybe they could say it in a different light,
Right.
or just not even mention it until way
I
later.
mean, imagine if you're graduating from college or high school, and they're reading your name, and then man, this man, it's fantastic. This kid's graduated because man, it wasn't looking good. I mean, this guy, I mean, his mom got shot, and his brother was in a gang, but man, he congratulations on that bachelor's degree that you got. Like, we don't do that. Or if you're getting a promotion, or
Yeah.
you're receiving an award, we're not
Hmm.
talking about these dark backstories, Um, so it shouldn't be any different for a guy getting drafted in the NFL.
No, I totally agree, man. I totally agree. Tell me a little bit about your shirt, man, that you got on.
So this is so my boy Tracy Jones. He runs a foundation called the T. Alexander Foundation, and man, let me tell you, this guy has a servant's heart for sure, man. He actually started out. I met him. So coincidentally enough, I met him when I was going through my crash course from being an agent. One of the things that I did was I flew to Chicago. This is before I got certified. I flew to Chicago and attended an MBA training. Excuse me, MBA training, an MBA agent training, and
Hmm.
that was actually also where I went to my first Bulls game at the United Center too. That same trip. But anyway,
Oh man.
um, I met Tracy there. Tracy lives on the outskirts of Philadelphia, and he actually, we hit it off immediately, man. And when I got certified as an agent, he and one of my other good friends, Julian Watson, man, we had created that agency that I referred to, Elite Players Agency. But Tracy, probably about a year in, maybe not even that long. He had already was working on his foundation at that point, and he was just like, "Hey, man, my heart's really with that. I want to put my effort and focus into that." So he stepped away and did that, and basically the foundation, what they do is they work with student athletes from middle school, high school, you know, through college, and basically helping them develop skills on and off the court, and also making sure that they kind of understand that, hey, man, kind of like that LeBron mantra of more than an athlete. They want to make sure that these athletes don't forget the student part. And one of the other callings that Tracy does along with this foundation is that he's always wants to talk about the inequities in sport when it comes to um, especially young black men, but black women as well. Obviously, you have the WNBA and other sports, but are make sure that we have a good understanding of who we are, that we're more than just the person that bounces the ball or catches the football. And so this shirt right here is one of the shirts that he passed out, or one of his foundation shirts. And the equity part is just once again fighting for equity within the sport and everything, everything from coaches to executive positions to, it's not just equality we want. We want equity in sports. So I might be butchering the entire, like, the message. Tracy would definitely be able to articulate it, and also I think that Tracy would be an excellent candidate for this podcast. I mean, the stuff that super intelligent, super bright, and he's probably butchering it. I'm probably butchering his message, but in general terms, that's what it is. And this is my first podcast, and I wanted to give my dude Tracy a shout out with the shirt. And he does really great work, man. And you need people like that to kind of push to like push everybody to make sure we don't get complacent.
Yeah.
We just because yeah, we have LeBron, we have Patrick Mahomes who are at the top of their games and making a whole bunch of money, but let's not forget about the guy who's playing at Southwest Middle State somewhere. That guy's probably not going to the league, no matter how much he thinks he is. And we want to make sure that that guy knows his worth more than just an athlete. And let's take care of those guys. And let's also make sure that even if you are at a Texas or an Alabama or Ohio State or whatever, make sure that those guys are not just having they use up their bodies for the universities, but not leaving that university um, educated and willing to do something that doesn't have to do with their sport, because
Hmm.
sport's not forever. Injuries happen. You're not talented enough. You get older, you age out, whatever. That they have something that they gained from that university. And so, yeah, that's the shirt, man. So shout out to my guy Tracy.
Shout out to Tracy because I love it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
definitely want one.
Yeah, definitely a huge fan. Before we transition to our rapid fire segment, where can the people listening and like viewing this on YouTube, where can they find this foundation at, if they want to look deeper into it and help
T.
support?
Alexander Foundation. So I want to say the website's like T. Alexander. But if you Google T. Alexander Foundation, you'll find him. That's his Instagram. That's his Twitter. Uh, yeah, that's the foundation.
All right, thank you for that. So now that just wraps up our interview portion of this interview. So we're moving on to our rapid fire questions. It's kind of a game that Desmond and I like to play with every
Okay.
um, per interviewee that we have here on the podcast. It's just a list of questions that Desmond and I we keep tally of, and we try to see which one of us is more correct of the people we have on. So we're trying to
Okay.
know you guys before you guys give us the answers.
Okay.
So lead us off with the question. So if you had to start a franchise with any quarterback, who are you taking and why?
Patrick Mahomes. Patrick
Hands
Mahomes.
down.
Like I said, I'm a big fan of his. I watch every Kansas City game that I can now. Uh, and I honestly think that, listen, Tom Brady's kind of putting the GOAT conversation kind of in an unreachable place at this point.
Yeah.
I used to say that while yes, Tom Brady is great, and my boy Eli Manning got him twice.
Yep, he sure
Uh,
did.
I used to say, like, listen, man, no one, everyone knows Tom Brady's great, but Tom Brady wasn't the best quarterback I ever saw from a physical standpoint. I used to say that. Whether you think he is or isn't, it's kind of hard to put any type of asterisk by him anymore. It's like, dude has way too many rings. It's ridiculous at the point. The dude's playing at a high level at an incredibly old age, and I think he's putting that GOAT conversation kind of out of reach. I do think when Patrick Mahomes is all said and done, I don't think he'll have as many rings as Tom Brady. That's a very tall task, especially with this being the generation of quarterbacks.
Super
There's just too
tall.
many good ones out that he's just not going to be able to go on a run like that. I do think when Patrick Mahomes is all said and done, that he will go down as, in some people's eyes, as the most talented quarterback to play the game. Not necessarily he'll be considered a GOAT, kind of like even if you are a Jordan's GOAT person like myself and us people who are right, uh, you can't say that LeBron's not a GOAT. Like, there's more than one GOAT if we want to talk about like the GOAT wing of the Hall of Fame. And I think Patrick Mahomes will do that part in the NFL. He will go down as a GOAT, maybe not the GOAT, but a GOAT. And I just think he's must see TV right now. And to me, there's not even a question who I'm going with. I'm starting a franchise. It's Patrick Mahomes.
I definitely understand that and can relate to that. I'm a Bears fan, so I always wish that we could have had either a Deshaun Watson
Yeah,
or
yeah.
Patrick
I know
Mahomes.
it's got to be depressing.
Oh, super depressing. Super depressing. All right. So who would you want on your team? We're gonna go to basketball real quick. So who would you want on your team? Russ or Harden?
Russ,
Mm.
Russ. I know I took a breath there because I wanted to give Harden respect for the breath. But Russ, once again, that's just me working for the franchise. And when you work for the franchise, Russ, there's an analogy, and I won't use it on this podcast because it may not be the most appropriate. But Russ is just that dude. If you a true Thunder fan, like if you a true like that shield run through your heart, Russ can't do any wrong, man. And let me tell you the thing I like most about Russ. The thing I like most about Russ, yeah, Russ has his faults, and we all know what they are. But Russ makes plays that no one in the NBA will make in terms of, you know, defensive plays, in terms of like, because he goes hard the entire game, he does things where you're like, the game's over, dude, or the game's no longer in doubt. And he does it, and now the game's in doubt just because he just has this no quit attitude about it.
Yeah.
And the triple doubles, the ferociousness, the in your face attitude, and it's like,
Yeah.
how can you not take inspiration in terms of, man, if I could take that mentality to life? Can you imagine if you had Russ? Everyone had Russ's mentality with life.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So here's the thing: there are two dudes after Jordan that I've seen with that Jordan mentality. Like, I'm gonna kill you and enjoy killing you, and like it's Kobe
Mm-hmm.
and Russ.
Russ. Yep.
It's a different gear. No disrespect to LeBron. Like I said,
Yep.
LeBron's number two. So there's no disrespect. LeBron's killer instinct is just different. It's in a different way.
Yep. Yep.
It's more in the magic sense. But Kobe and Russ, there's a mentality that you could take from them, just from a life sense, that you're like, that's how you attack life. So yeah, Russ, give me Russ. Listen, it's Harden the better player, probably.
Yeah,
If you look at their careers in whole, but give me Russ. I'll
yeah,
ride and die with Russ.
yeah. I coming in watching because I was watching watching Russ and I was watching Rose, and those two
Yeah,
Russ's mentality is just a whole different level, and I always loved it. It's something that I probably don't appreciate to this day,
right.
but that dude, I know what you wanted to say,
Yeah.
but 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 Russ is that dude, man, and just he put his heart and soul to everything, man.
Yeah. Yeah. It's Russ, man. Give me Russ. You want to challenge? You should have said Russ or Katie. That would have had me think for a second.
Ah, I started to set you up there. I was like, nah, I'm gonna tell you that because he made me pick KD. So yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, so then here we go. So whose jersey scheme or design would you steal to put on your favorite team?
Football or basketball?
Either or, you could pick.
Here's the thing. Football. I really do love the Giants color scheme. In fact, I kind of wish they would go back. And I love their current helmets. I've always loved their current helmets, but I
Mm-hmm.
kind of wish and hope that they would go back to the Giants with the line underneath, with the current
Okay.
with the current jersey scheme. So they're up there for sure. If they're not, I don't think they're one for me. They're like two or three. My favorite, I would say my favorite color scheme in the NFL that I just absolutely love. I love the Ravens. I really love what the Ravens do with their color scheme. So it'd probably be the Ravens a little bit over the Giants. As a Giants fan, you grow up hating the Cowboys, but is the
Who doesn't?
Cowboys is really clean. The Cowboys is really clean, and Seahawks, Steelers, I love them as well. I love what the Rams are doing with their current uniform, but I would say the
Yeah.
Ravens. And then basketball, I'd say what the Thunder is near the bottom. I'll tell you that much.
Oof, that's another topic, but yeah.
Thunder's near the bottom. Listen, man, if I could change some things with Thunder, I'm bringing in some people to get the design of the jerseys changed in the logo too.
Yeah.
But
Ooh.
basketball wise, I would say it's really hard to go against what like Miami's doing. And what's funny about what Miami is that I think
Mm.
they almost got a little bit too much. They almost were feeling themselves a little bit too much because with them first the Miami Vice Nice jerseys, they though that was GOAT
That was
status.
cold.
It
Yeah.
was GOAT status. You didn't need to touch it anymore. You didn't need
Yeah.
to touch it anymore. They touch it too much. Nowadays it look like a couple like they look like they're walking around with cotton candy on their uniform. You know, so I really love what Miami's doing. I really love what Charlotte's done with their jerseys. So I would say somewhere between Charlotte and Miami. I'll give the edge to Miami.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really feeling those Charlotte ones too because I've been following more on social media and everything, and the way that they promote their stuff and the way that that color flows and that Buzz City and just even that court that they have. I
And
just
shout out to my friend at Brooklyn. I love what Brooklyn's doing as well. In fact, once again, I'm gonna give them the Miami Award for trying too much because that black and white is just clean, and then the Biggie
Mm-hmm.
jersey is clean. They doing some stuff now, and I know there's some sort of city tie-in with some of their alternates they're doing now, but that black and white is just too clean to mess with. It's I love what they're doing from a jersey standpoint as well. So
I definitely
so
agree.
yeah.
Go ahead,
I
E.
just say okay. So if you had to choose TV shows or movies,
excellent question. I love a good movie. I love a good movie, but thing is, movies end, or at least they end a lot quicker than a TV show.
Ooh,
Like
tell it.
give me Snowfall, give me Wire, give me Game of Thrones,
Tell it.
give me something that I can enjoy over a period of time. You know, movies one and done. No matter how great that movie is. Like Godfather 2 is my favorite movie. But Godfather, as long as Godfather 2 it ends. You watch the entire thing in that day. You can watch all three Godfathers in one day. It'll be one long day, but in the day. But The Wire, Snowfall, Game of Thrones, I love Billions. Uh, you know, give me that, man. I love a good TV series, a good TV show. So
Mm.
TV show.
I love a good TV show as well.
Mhm.
Can't
Yeah,
go wrong.
yeah, I can definitely agree with that. That's kind of been the hot topic here is which one TV shows or movies. I mean, Desmond's been on the TV shows. You can just keep watching them, and then,
Yeah,
I mean, they'll eventually come to an end, but you can get a couple seasons, 4, 5,
right.
6, 7, 8 seasons out of them.
Exactly.
Yeah. Are you a chocolate chip person or a chocolate chip cookie type person or raisin?
That's the
Oh,
easiest
raisin.
question. And no, I hate raisin. I hate raisin anything. Raisin
Oh,
cookie. Like I hate raisin so much. Like I love raisin bran, except I take the raisins out and just eat the bran. I'm a chocolate chip cookie fan. So I have two kryptonite. If I was a superhero, there was two things that would be my kryptonite. Ice cream and chocolate chip cookies. Like a good chocolate chip cookie, not like a bad chocolate chip cookie. Like a really good, like moist, melt in your mouth cookie, chocolate chip. Yeah, that's easy.
I I definitely can relate to the kryptonite because I like some Oreo cookies, cookies and cream ice cream.
Yep. Krispy
Definitely
Kreme is my favorite ice cream, by the way. So
gotta
yes.
yeah, always gotta go for it.
Yeah.
I probably drive my wife crazy with it because I come walk in the house with a big old bowl. But
Yeah, that was the easiest one.
I'm gonna ask this question,
Okay.
and then but I already know what your answer may be. But
Okay.
you get a chance to take over any NFL or NBA organization. Who do you choose and why?
It's an easy question, but it's not an easy question. I
Mm-hmm.
will tell you right away. It's the Thunder. I would take over my hometown team.
Mm-hmm.
I'd pimp it out with some Brooklyn and Atlanta type, coolness and swag,
Yeah.
and I really have it humming. Uh, but man, if you're talking from a pure business standpoint of like any franchise in NBA or NFL, as much as I grew up hating them, it's kind of hard to not do the Cowboys. Right? That has to be the
Mm,
coolest ownership thing ever, right? Like you own the star.
that's true.
So owning the Cowboys, that'd be hard. I probably my I don't know, man. That'd be a toss up, but it'd be somewhere between the Thunder and the Cowboys. That'd be that'd be my choices, and that'd be a hard choice for me to make. Do I go with the money with the Cowboys, or do I go with my heart with the Thunder?
Go where the heart's at, man.
Yeah, I have more. I definitely have more pride owning the Thunder for sure.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, that kind of concludes the interview today. We like to thank you, Lonnie, for joining Desmond and I and just dropping all the knowledge that you have and just your experience from working in the NBA with the Thunder and then an NFL agent and all the stuff you've done there. So we'd like to thank you for giving us the time and coming out.
Now, I appreciate you too, gentlemen. This was fun. My first podcast, and I enjoyed every second of it. So I enjoyed it.
Well,
That's
you're
awesome.
welcome. Um, so where can the listeners and viewers, where can they find you on social media and follow along with what you're doing?
Yeah, Twitter and Instagram, Agent Lonnie Nick, Nick spelled Nich. It's the handle of both. So follow me there. So I try to keep a steady flow of content going. It's not the most consistent, but I'll tell you when I come with it, it's usually somewhat enjoyable. At least I think so anyway.
Yeah. No,
That's
same.
awesome. Well, I'd like to thank you, and for the people listening and viewing at home, You can follow us at Capturing the Game. You can follow us on Instagram at Capturing the Game Pod, on Twitter at CTG_podcast, and you can search us up on YouTube and Facebook at Capture the Game Podcast.
All right. Appreciate it, guys.